Hello, this is Gary Hines with Career Strategy Forum, and I am coming today. It's March 2026, and I'm coming to you from Philadelphia. And I'd like to thank you for joining in today. And today, I want to focus on something that's really important for job seekers, and that's active interviewing strategies. So I want to talk about that in just a minute, but I want to let you know that you can hear this show on G-Town Radio, gtownradio.com, WGGT-LP 92.9 FM in Philadelphia. Also at gtownradio.com anytime. And I say that because my show, Career Strategy Forum, comes on the second and fourth Saturday of every month at 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. On G-Town Radio. Now, you can also listen to my show on other platforms, including YouTube, Mixcloud, and Spotify for creators. I'll give you more of that information before this session is over. But anyway, I want to thank you again for joining in. And also, before we get started, just want to tell you quickly, too, about an event coming up this month of March on the 28th. We'll be interviewing State Representative Andre D. Carroll, who is the state legislator for the 201st District here in Germantown in Philadelphia. So we're having a lively conversation with him about workforce development, job training, um, and business ownership in his district. So you really want to look forward to that. March 28th, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. here on G-Town Radio. You'll be able to hear the broadcast of his interview and show and roundtable discussion on these platforms, YouTube, Spotify for creators, and Mixcloud. So again, all that information will be coming forth as we move forward. Okay. I like to start off with just a general question for job seekers. What do you consider to be your greatest interview hurdles? So some people are really good at interviews. They can get through them with no problem. It's comfortable for them. Other people freeze up, get totally paranoid, and sometimes they lose the job offer, based on the interview. So it could be something like answering questions. Maybe it's just basic questions you have an issue with. Maybe it's questions that you ask the company. You can't think of the right questions that you should pose to the interviewer about the company that you're applying to. Or maybe it's just keeping your answers short and your delivery method. Maybe you're not focused, or you're fidgety, or you're just plain nervous, which is totally natural and totally acceptable. I mean, it happens to everybody. And or maybe it could be like selling yourself. Just how do I talk about myself comfortably? A lot of people have issues with this because they don't know how to do it. They have problems sort of explaining some of the successes and the history and the background that they have. So this may cause them to sort of freeze up and not have the best interview experience. So anyway, I wanted to start off by asking that question just to see in your head, you could think about some of the things that may be holding you back on having a really, really good interview. Okay. So another thing I like to say is that there are lots of poorly trained interviewers. So there are two sides of the interview process: hiring managers and candidates. And hiring managers are seldom trained to interview, and most hiring managers don't do a lot of hiring and interviewing. Depending on the size of the company, it's usually a two-part or a three-part process of who you may talk to versus who you may end up working for. If it's a smaller company, you may have the person who actually owns the business doing everything, interviewing you, reviewing your resume, and actually becoming your immediate supervisor. So it really just kind of depends on the company that you're applying for. The biggest mistake hiring managers make is they base hiring decisions on a gut feeling. These results this results on hiring managers typically selecting people like themselves and using unconscious biases that rule out good people for no reason. Also, a big complaint about hiring managers and interviews is they often do almost all the talking and don't get to know the candidate. This may be true, but it's the candidate that has to do something about it. So we can't blame the actual interviewer on some of the things that we don't feel were done properly. Sometimes this means the applicant has to step up. The interviewee has to step up and maybe fill in some of the gaps that may be missing from what the interviewer is asking or saying. Okay, so most candidates don't like interviews and they may not be good at it. Um, Candidates don't like to interview, and almost all candidates are bad at interviewing. So why would that be? Is it just that they don't have enough practice or enough rehearsal? Or, there could be a number of different things that cause folks from having bad interviews. But let's explore some of the things that, may be happening along those lines. Okay, so interviewing and anxiety. So the word choke means the worst performance than expected given what a performer is capable of doing and what the person has done in the past. So that's a definition of, you can choke. You probably heard this expression before. You can get choked up when you have to talk about yourself or your past experiences and what you're capable of or what you bring to the table. So we've all been in those situations, maybe not with job interviews, but we've choked up in some situation. So some of the things you may be asking yourself, am I doing this right? Do I sound stupid? What if I make a fool of myself? Will they ask questions I can't answer? Am I really qualified for the job? Can the interviewer see me trembling? Am I going to lose a job opportunity? So all of this anxiety really affects your delivery and your performance in an interview. So due to anxiety or fear about interviews, candidates may choke. The fears listed here are some of the typical fears that I just mentioned. Most of these fears can be reduced by careful and thorough preparation for the interview. Also, many of these fears are unfounded. People don't sound stupid and they seldom make a fool of themselves. The answer is to prepare, and more preparation. As a candidate prepares, confidence goes up and fear goes down. Preparation should include researching the industry, the company, the job, and the hiring manager using Google and LinkedIn. So you can find out a lot of information about companies and where they are and what they do, just by going online and doing a basic search. And we've talked about this in past programs. It's about researching a company and finding out as much as you can about the company. And sometimes this is as easy as just going to the website and figuring out who does what in what position and what the company is all about. So candidates don't think like a small business, but they should. As we talk about the job search basics, the candidate is a company of one. They need to think like a company of one, selling their services to a customer, not a job seeker looking to be an employee. Employees are passive. They sit down and react by answering questions they are asked. Small companies answer questions, but they also have information they want to convey to the interviewer, and they are active in expressing it. Just as a salesperson has service or product information they want to convey, job candidates should have information they want to convey. What is their services? What are their skills, experiences, and education? And what do they offer? And what are the benefits of all of this information? What value do customers get from using their services? Basically, how will the job seeker help the company make money? This is really an important bottom line. Or maybe they want to help them get new clients or contacts or make a difference, such as teachers, healthcare, or nonprofits. So how does a potential candidate do this for a company? Why are their services better than other candidates? What is their competitive advantage? And most job seekers don't think in terms like this. They just think about answering questions. But in an interview, you got to do all of these things that I just mentioned. Not only sell yourself and your benefits, but you got to think about, what does the company see in you? What would they get out of you? And what is the advantage that you have maybe over other candidates for the same position? How can these candidates demonstrate their skills better? So there are ways to do that. And some of the ways to do that are by offering and presenting accomplishment stories, which we've talked about in previous programs. And I'll cover that in a little bit. All right, so sometimes candidates focus and worry about answering questions too much. Instead of selling themselves and communicating information they want the interviewer to know. There are dozens of books and hundreds of websites dedicated to answering specific job interview questions. Many candidates buy these books or look at these websites and spend too much time preparing to answer questions they may never be asked. So I know I said preparation, preparation, prepare, 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 but there's such a thing as over preparing as well. They should prepare for the most common and standard questions, including things like, why do you want to work here? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What are your greatest strengths and weaknesses? Why should we hire you? Tell me about yourself. Those are like the basic questions that you would probably get in almost any interview. And they could be lead in questions before they get down to more specifics about the job title, the job responsibilities, and the duties. Other than these questions, they should concentrate on developing information they want to communicate and then use questions they are asked to communicate that information. So, job seekers can be like politicians. When asked a question, they answer the question they want to be asked rather than the question they are being asked. It's crazy. For example, how well do you know how to use Excel? And an answer, I have used Excel, and one of the strengths I have is I am a quick learner. I am able to pick up almost anything on a computer program or work process. So, that could be a typical answer. I can use a work process or a computer program and become productive in a short amount of time. Let me give you an example of a situation where I learned quickly. So there is where you would use some of your background, some of your accomplishment stories to give an example of how you had, how you have done this use of Excel. Because anybody can say they know how to do something, but let's prove it. Let's show some real world examples of how we can do this. All right, so another area that candidates sometimes don't break out and differentiate themselves. Most candidates do what every other candidate does, sits passively, waits for questions, answers questions as best they can, and hope for the best. Candidates need to do something different, be active and communicate information they want interviewers to know. Go to an interviewer with a list of information that they want to communicate, information that supports the contention that they are the best candidate for the job. The message is to be active in interviews. Think of it as more of a conversation, not just kind of sitting passively answering questions, but also making comments, making suggestions, throwing in questions even before they ask you, do you have any questions? So let them know you're actively listening and you're thinking ahead about some of the things that they are saying and asking of you as well. Okay, another example, and we talked about a couple of things here, but candidates don't keep their focus on the bottom line. How would they make the company money? So, what's your plan for doing this job? And what is your plan for helping us to benefit and either make money off of you or offer better services off of you? As I mentioned earlier, get new clients. How do you plan to do that? Everyone is hired for only one reason, to make a company or an organization money. They do this by selling or by doing a better job, quicker, cheaper, faster. Even a janitor can make a company money by cleaning faster, by using less cleaning product, by coming up with better cleaning methods. So you see where I'm going with this. There's many ways that an employee can make a company money. And again, I don't want to just focus on money. As I said, make a company stronger, more viable, offer better services, get better ratings. So maybe they don't make money directly for the company, but in strengthening the company's presence and their product and their service, they're more attractive to, say, particular funders if it's a nonprofit. So as a candidate prepares for an interview, They need to keep in mind how they will make the company better or make the company money and try to address this issue in the interview. Basically answering how will they do the job better, quicker, cheaper, all of these things. Candidates should try to work these answers in the questions they are asked and give examples of how they have performed better, quicker, or cheaper on previous jobs. Well, if they are a non-selling company, maybe they're a service company, maybe they're making the company more profitable in their bottom line, in their revenue generation. So there's a couple of different ways to look at that depending on the type of company that you're actually applying to. So one of the things I want to say too is that an interview is a sales call. Now, don't sell. There is no place in sales for selling, convincing, cajoling, or being pushy. Sales is about matching a solution to a problem. Listen, learn, and connect your services to the problem they are having. Sometimes you can find out the problem that they're having by going on their website, by going on their LinkedIn page, by finding out on their social media pages. What are they struggling with? Do they need to hire more people? Do they need to bring costs down? Do they need to expand to new markets? Do they need to become more organized? Sometimes these things are readily available to the public, and you can go in with that knowledge and information and say, I understand the company is looking to expand, but is having trouble with site location. I'm just saying this could be a possibility. So, job search is a sales process, candidates selling their services and in the employment marketplace. And the interview is definitely a sales call. Candidates should embrace a sales mentality and be prepared to present their solution to the problem, not just answer questions. Candidates are being hired to solve a problem that results in the company making money or offering better service. Thinking about a job as a problem to be solved is different thinking. Are open to job any open job can be thought of as a problem. It can be a shortage of workers to do the job or a new job that has to be done. Companies only hire when they need people. So by definition, they have a problem, and needing people is a problem. Candidates need to be proactive in thinking about how their service solves a problem for the company, how bringing you on as a candidate will solve their problem. The first step in the interview process is a needs analysis, where the candidate learns as much as they can about the job. The candidate should ask questions such as, what are the critical needs of the job? How is success measured on this job? What are the expectations for the first 6 months, 12 months, etc.? Maybe these questions can be asked throughout the interview and you won't have to wait until the end. Feel out how the conversation is going and what kind of interviewer is in front of you. If they're open to you asking questions like that during the interview, and you just kind of jump in and like during maybe a brief period of silence, you can ask these things. Okay. Others might be, how's a typical day spent on the job? Who does a person on this job interact with? Once they understand the details of the job, they can connect their background, experience, training, and education to the job. Okay. Okay. So the request here, tell me about yourself, is really tell me about yourself in relation to this job. So this could also come in as in the form of please introduce yourself. Who are you? Tell me all about you. This kind of thing. Candidates get confused about what to say about themselves. They should only focus in on things relevant to the job. So an answer like, I have done similar work for the past 3 years. The work I have done includes, and I am very skilled in X, Y, and Z. I am interested in this job because, and it should be focused on what they can contribute to an employer, not their own needs. So I bring to the table this level experience. I bring to the table this education, this certification, this background. All right. So that's a way to, say who I am. Okay. Now, the importance of, as I had mentioned a little bit earlier, accomplishment stories, the importance of accomplishment stories and interviews. What is the importance of these things? So again, when I say accomplishment stories, that's a term I use, but it's also the same thing as success stories, um, or the STAR method. Some people situation, task, accomplishment, and reward or results. As some people call it the STAR method. Same thing. So, what is the importance of these stories and interviews? What proves you have done what you say you can do. As I mentioned earlier, don't just say you know the program Excel. How have you used Excel in the past? Give an example. You want to think about stories that have impact. Our brains are wired to remember stories. Provides details that help employers understand what you do and how you can contribute. And it also gives you prepared answers for interview questions. So, I have, again, as I mentioned, I have a whole program on accomplishment stories about creating them. Uh, Excuse me, I have a template that I use. If you want to get that information from me, send me an email to Gary@GaryHeinzConsulting.com, and I'll certainly send you this template for free. Okay. So, just a little bit of an overview of an accomplishment story. Your career and your life are filled with accomplishments, times when you went above and beyond the scope of your job responsibilities or your own expectations of yourself. Stories about your accomplishments are powerful communicators of your skills, abilities, and potential contributions to prospective employers. Accomplishment stories are used throughout your job search process. A brief bullet list of accomplishments appear on your resume and may be included in networking cover letters. Full length accomplishment stories are used during interviews to give concrete examples of times when you use specific skills to solve problems. The more stories you have and the more you use them, the more powerful your job search will be. And as I said, you can use these in so many different ways at a networking event, when you meet one on one with a potential, employer or with a potential connection to a company you want to work for. You can mention some of the accomplishment stories that you've had in your past jobs. And again, in a place like LinkedIn, they're really beneficial because LinkedIn lets you, um, really post a lot of things on your profile that you really can't do on a resume. So think about that. Accomplishment stories are very beneficial. Again, hit me up if you need a template and a grid that I created that you can use to sort of specify particular accomplishment stories, sometime based on the occupation. You may be a talented person who's has multiple skills and has worked in a variety of industries. You can tailor those accomplishment stories to those industries. Okay. Accomplishment stories are the cornerstone of your search communications. On resumes and cover letters, everyone claims they do good work, but how do they prove that? You can prove it by citing your successes and your accomplishments. I can tell you I'm a good salesperson, or I can tell you I'm a good salesperson and I sold 50% more than my quota, and I was selected as a salesperson of the year. Which statement is more convincing? One that just says I'm a good salesperson, or the one that talks about in numbers how much I increased my sales quota, that I was chosen for salesperson of the year. That makes more of a lasting impression on somebody. In interviews, accomplishment stories are used to answer questions in a more memorable and meaningful way. Anytime a candidate is asked a question, they can answer with an accomplishment story, and they should tell that story. That would be super beneficial to them. Okay. All right. The last part I'll say about accomplishment stories and your interview, identify three main selling points that you have and develop accomplishment stories for each. Identify a position's three main responsibilities and develop accomplishment stories for each. So, this is a little prep work before the interview. To prepare accomplishment stories, candidates should identify their main selling points for the job to which they're applying, and then have a story for each. The selling points and stories should be specific to that job. So, again, accomplishment stories can be used, changed, edited, ramped up, you know, and drilled down on depending on the position. So if a strength is in using a specific computer software, they should have a story about using that software with a good outcome. From the job description, take three primary job responsibilities and develop accomplishment stories about having done each one of those. So, if it calls for good sales, good organization, good leadership skills in the job description, find something you did in the past to talk about that good sales experience, to talk about that teamwork or leadership, or talking about self initiative. But look inside that job responsibility description and find something that you did. Of course, don't make anything up, but you should find something that's connected to what they're looking for. So if a main responsibility is serving customers, have an accomplishment story about having provided good customer service in some previous position or your current position. Developing these accomplishment stories are all part of being well prepared for the interview. If a candidate goes to the interview and not having a prepared accomplishment stories, they didn't prepare the best they could. And I'm telling you, they are very beneficial. And once you create them, as I said, you can use them in so many different ways, you know, in a very ad hoc kind of conversation as part of your elevator speech. You can use accomplishment stories. So you need to think about them. And again, they could be something very small. One that I like to use as an example is organization. I worked for a company for 5 years, and one of the issues that they had, this is an example. One of the issues they had is that the supply closet was totally unorganized. So I took it upon myself to reorganize this closet because every time I went in there, I couldn't find anything. I spent a lot of time searching for the tools that I need. So what did I do? I emptied out the closet completely. I reorganized things by category. I labeled them and actually put up a chart on the door that said, this is the number of items that we have of this particular tool, and here's the date of that number. When they're depleted, please fill in how many you've taken so that when we go to reorder, we know how many we need. What did this do? This made the closet so much more accessible and easy to manage that the results were people spent less time. The company actually saved money on ordering products because they weren't reordering things that they had buried underneath a box somewhere in this closet. So this is an accomplishment story. And one of the key things and one of the key pieces about accomplishment stories is that at the end, you can talk about what skills that you use to accomplish these stories, to accomplish this particular project. Was it initiation? Was it communication? Was it leadership? Was it numerical ability? What was it that you used to accomplish this and get this work done? So again, you got a whole complete story there. The problem, the situation, how you resolved it, and what were the outcomes, the results, and what skills did you use? So again, a good um, program and a good concept to use for interviews. Okay. I'm not going to go through kind of how you should dress for a particular interview. I think that is pretty common sense these days. Men should probably wear a dark suit. Women should wear a suit as well, possibly a pantsuit, but some sort of business like attire. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. I will create another video, a shorter one on like dressing for success and that kind of thing. But just take it from me that if you're a male, you should probably wear a dark colored suit, a plain white shirt, and a non-pattern tie. A woman should wear maybe something similar, some type of business suit that could be a skirt or slacks. But you want to keep jewelry down low, keep makeup down low. Don't wear cologne or heavy cologne, things like that. So everything should be pressed and neat and clean and presentable. Okay, so I hope that covers a little bit about dress. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. All right, so I'm going to come back. I want to make this one statement. Many candidates are hesitant to brag about themselves This is like selling a car with the best gas mileage, but not mentioning it. Candidates have to get over being modest. If they can't brag about themselves, they won't be able to convince the hiring manager to hire them. So, what are some reasons you might hesitate to brag about yourself? Well, it could be a lot of things. I'm just not a bragging person. I'm very modest. I'm very, I'm a little bit shy about talking about myself, but this is not good. This is where you need to shine. You need to brag. You need to talk about yourself and the good things that you have done, or the good things you can do and will bring to the company. Okay. All right. So let me skip gears a little bit to now talking a little bit about the interviewer's favorite types of questions. When interviewing job candidates, what is your favorite type of question to ask? Responses from senior managers include the following. So, questions that are pertaining to the position or company. 39% said that is their favorite type of question, something that's pertaining to the position of the company. What do you know about being an accountant? What do you know about company X, Y, and Z? How long have we been in business? How many branches do we have, etc.? This all comes from research. A second type of question from these senior hiring managers, and this is 22% of this survey, previous or current experience. In other words, talk about your previous experience, or if you're currently working, what is your current experience about? So these are their favorite types of questions as well. The next in line at 18% is personal attributes and characteristics. Are you a self starter? Are you a team player? Are you a leader? Are you a follower? Are you a good communicator? Do you write well? Are you comfortable in doing presentations? So they want to know personal attributes and characteristics. Comes in at 18%. Excuse me. The next area at 10% is personal goals and interests. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why do you want to work for this company? What are your personal interests? What do you like to do outside of work? What are some of the things that keep you going, keep you interested? Okay. That's the fourth area that senior managers like to talk about. The fifth area is theoretical questions. Tell me about a time. What is the process you use to achieve X, Y, and Z? Talk about your past experience in relation to the job opening. You know, are you dependable? Are you flexible? Are you a self starter? Things like that. But theoretical questions are the kind of situational or behavioral based questions, which are very, very popular in today's world, in today's interviewing world. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Coming back, let's address the elephants in the room. Do you have gaps in employment? What were you doing during those gaps? Do you have short-term jobs? Some maybe they were you work for a temp agency, or maybe they were time constricted positions. Why is the length of your job experience so short? Did you hold any lower level positions and maybe worked your way up? How about the lack of experience? Do you have any education that supports the job you're applying for? Do you have responsibilities and other types of work that are similar to the experience that we're looking for this position? And maybe there's an age difference. Are you in tune if you're an older worker? Are you in tune to some of the ways that the office environment is in today's world? Do you bring a lot of wealth of knowledge and experience to this position that maybe helps us with younger employees? So these are sometimes questions that might throw you off a bit, but they're sometimes considered the elephants in the room. And what you should do also is anticipate interview questions. Ask yourself, if I was hiring someone for this job, what questions would I ask? These are the likely questions. Prepare answers along with stories and examples. So think about this. What would you want to know about a candidate for a position you had an opening for at your company? So you can even play devil's advocate, or you could sort of play role play with a friend or with the mirror or with the camera on your computer and sort of ask yourself questions that you'd like to answer about this position as if you were interviewing yourself. And remember, I always say this about interviews. They're two-way. It's a two-way conversation. You have got to be able to learn the company. You got to be able to learn the interviewer. How long have you been in this position? How long were you with this company? How do you feel about working here? Be bold. Ask these kind of questions. They may not want to give you a lot of answers or complete answers. That's okay. Ask the question though. So remember, it's a two-way street. You're interviewing the company as well. If you're going to work and give them your time and experience and background and knowledge, you want to know a lot about them as well. Okay. Candidates are usually focused on what questions they will be asked and if they will be able to answer them. Suggest candidates can predict interview questions by just thinking about what they would want to know if they were doing the hiring. They won't be able to guess all the possible questions asked in an interview, but they should be able to guess the basic ones. So, why do you want this position? Why are you leaving your last company? What do you know about this company? What skills do you bring to the table? How can we benefit from hiring you? Those are the basics. Okay. All right. Moving on. This answers, this is the basics of answering any interview questions. So just remember, you always want to be positive, no negative comments. When you're talking about why you're leaving a particular company or why you left a particular company, you don't want to trash the company. You certainly don't want to say anything negative about former supervisors. You don't want to say anything negative about companies because in the interviewer's mind, they can say, okay, well, if they trash the company this way, how are they going to think about the company when they come in here to work for us? All right. You want to take your time and think before answering. Let me think about that for a moment. It's perfectly normal and perfectly appropriate to say at any given time during any question, especially if you really have to think about what story am I going to connect to this if I can. All right. You can always say, I don't know. I'd like to find out more. I'd like to maybe think about it and maybe get back to you on it. Things like that make you a human. You're not a robot. So you should be able to answer you should be able to answer and say something like, I don't know. Um, I'd like to think about that. I'm not really sure of the answer. I'd like to really think about it a little bit more, maybe get back to you on it. Things like this. Okay, we talked about using stories and examples wherever possible. Never speak for more than 2 minutes if possible. At 2 minutes, stop and ask, have I answered your question? Um, and then this might be appropriate time to say, can I give you an example of what I'm saying here, of something that happened in a situation in the past? So candidates can't guess which of the one thousands of possible interview questions they will be asked. So they should be prepared with the basics of answering any question. Again, always be positive. No one wants to hire a negative person, and no one wants to hire a person who might badmouth them. If they badmouth a previous employer, they may badmouth this employer. And in today's world, with the world of Yelp and online reviews, and LinkedIn in general, people can go online and trash a company, trash specific people in that company. They want to know, are you going to be this kind of person? Take your time and think about answering. Let me think about that for a moment. Interviews are not timed quizzes. Candidates can think about their answers and not feel rushed. Taking time to answer a question makes candidates look thoughtful and considerate. So remember, don't rush and answer a question. Take your time, take a deep breath, maybe count to five, maybe look around the room a little bit, ponder it. Mm, well, you know, it makes you look more thoughtful than just blurting out an answer right away. You can say, I don't know. As I mentioned, candidates shouldn't think they have the answer to answer every question. It is perfectly okay to say, I don't know, especially rather than trying to bluff an answer. Just because you don't know the answer to a question or two doesn't mean you're not getting the job. All right. So don't feel embarrassed about that if you don't answer. Some people may look at it as a good sign that you don't know everything. You're not going to come in and be the sole expert on everything because it tells the interviewer, hey, this person may be open to learning. Hey, if I don't know the answer, I'm certainly willing to learn about it. I'd be so happy to learn more about it. Is there a place where I can research this and find out more about it? You can say things like that. Um, so again, this I'm not sure if I'm totally comfortable with saying never speak for more than 2 minutes. Some companies will have created this rule, but I suggest you do what is right at the interview. Feel the interviewer out. If they want you to talk for more than 2 minutes, you can kind of figure that out from body language. If they're sitting up and they're listening to you, and they're sort of giving you head nods, shaking, giving direct eye contact, you probably can go on and speak for longer than that. So again, this may not be feasible, the 2 minute limit. Um, but feel how the interviewer is going. The interviewer may say, "Tell me more." If you just don't want to ramble and lose the interviewer, just say that, as I mentioned, did I answer this question? Do you feel that, you want more answers? Did I make myself clear on that? Okay. So this is key. All right. And the next topic, I want to talk about preparing exit statements. You may be asked these in an interview. Why are you no longer at a previous job? Don't explain, don't complain. So, good or bad, be prepared with an exit statement. And one of my other programs and videos and podcasts, I talk about verbal statements. So, there's a couple of different ways to do verbal statements. There's a positioning statement, which is kind of like your elevator speech. Who am I? What am I looking for? What do I bring to the table? And then there's something called a departure statement, or some people call it an exit statement. Why am I now looking for a job? Why am I currently not, happy in my position, or why am I leaving my company? The biggest thing as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, you don't want to trash the company. You don't want to be negative about why you're leaving. You want to talk about new opportunity possibilities, time to grow. I just got certified in X, Y, and Z, and I want to utilize those services. My room for growth is limited at this particular organization. I want to explore new opportunities. I want to change careers. There's so many ways to say things on exit statements. Okay. Things like the company changed direction and I was not necessarily interested in going in a different pathway. This is very common. This happened to me personally. Companies change leadership, companies change ownership, and people go in a different direction based on a lot of things, on the bottom line, on new markets, on political climates, etc. So that's one way to explain it. The leadership changed and my role changed as well. I was downsized. Okay. I was given more responsibility that I actually wasn't prepared to handle. You can say all kind of things, but be honest. And again, keep it positive. Keep it, keep it above board. It was time for me to pursue other interests to showcase my skills and talents. Again, say you decided on your own to take a class in, I don't know, C++ or computer basics or some other language, and you want to actually utilize that in a new position. And you thought, hey, this company is interviewing for something that I just got certified in, or I'm just now feeling more comfortable in. All right. So you want to prepare and have those exit statements ready. All right. Here's another thing that always seems to happen and sort of tricks people up. What is your greatest what is your greatest strength? And you should have an example. So, probably one of the worst things to say these days is that I'm a people person. I mean, everybody's a people person. So, I would like probably not say that. But anyway, lots of candidates are concerned about answering the greatest weakness question, basically to answer this question. Come up with a weakness that is not critical to the job, like not being good with numbers for an accountant. State the weakness and then talk about what you are doing to correct that problem. So again, the greatest strength is usually pretty easy. I'm very good at communication. I write very well. I'm good at trends. I follow the markets. I'm up on competition. I read I read the sales figures of other companies. I know the direction, the trends that are happening in the industry. Things like that. I bring self initiative. I'm a self starter. I look for projects. I'm great in assistance. There's many, many things that people can list as their greatest, greatest strength. Where they have problems at is weaknesses. And I wouldn't say to say something like, I don't have any weaknesses, because everybody has a weakness somewhere. But what you want to make sure you say is that weakness is something that I'm working on. I may not be that strong in Microsoft Outlook or Microsoft Project, but I'm learning it now and I'm taking a short course and I want to get better at it. I might not be the greatest at foreign relationships, but I'm trying to get better at that. I'm trying to learn another language. I know that we have companies, or your company has locations internationally, and I'm trying to learn and understand the culture of international business. So, something to that effect. Okay. So we all have weaknesses. Come up with a weakness that is not critical to the job, like not being good with numbers, as I just mentioned. Stake the weakness and talk about how you're addressing that weakness. We all have weaknesses. Mature workers know what their weaknesses are and they are working with them or working on them. This is all an employer can ask for. Immature workers don't know their weaknesses, so they often aren't working with them. So think about what it is and make it something minor. Don't make it like this example says. You don't want to say you're not good in numbers or you're not good with spreadsheets and you're applying for an accounting position. You may want to say you're not good with like follow through and you're really trying to get a little bit better organized and you want to make it modest. If you come off as an unorganized person, that's probably a red flag for them as well. So again, if they ask you, tell me about a weakness, answer the weakness question with a story. Be clear, concise, and brief. Never choose a weakness related to the critical requirements of a job. Always choose a weakness that you're working on. So I don't completely feel comfortable using Salesforce as an example, but I'm taking a course on it. I'm learning it on my own. I tend to take on a lot of projects. I'm learning to prioritize and allocate my time better. I'm learning to delegate more. Could be considered a weakness. But again, is it really a weakness? It's really a strength that you're not that strong in, but you're working on. So just keep it to that level and you should be okay. All right, be prepared to answer the question, why should we hire you? Your answer could be, you need X, and I'm the best person for the job of Y, and because of Y. So what makes you uniquely qualified? Bring up your soft skills, include examples, be specific and brief, discuss accomplishments, be enthusiastic. So you want to listen for real-time clues or cues. As you hear finer details of job requirements, jot down some keywords from your background that will help you provide a targeted response once the hiring manager asks this question. If, for example, organizational skills are paramount, you may jot down certain related software programs you use. I don't know, Outlook, Access, Project, Outlook. You may make minor notes, still try to maintain good eye contact and stay in an active listening mode. But, again, this is another example of how, this is an interactive conversation type interview. You want to be jotting down notes. If they say something, we want somebody who can get on the job and be up to speed in 30 days. You want to make note of that. And then you can always come back and say, well, I've been able to really get through an orientation and onboarding process in less than 30 days. Something to that effect. Since you now have more data on the real requirements, it's time to turn up your pitch a notch. For instance, know your unique selling proposition. What makes you particularly qualified for the job among your peers? What does the firm present publicly and in the interview? How does your unique background align with their mission? Again, you should know what their mission is because you've researched the company before you walked into the interview. Now, one thing that I should mention, and it just came to my mind right now, this is hopefully the face-to-face interview. And the face-to-face could be in person or online, but this isn't a pre-phone interview. This is the actual interview. During the pre-phone interview, they may ask you some of the basic questions that I said earlier. Why are you looking at this company? What do you know about the position, etc.? This topic that we're covering today is more the detailed active strategies interview where you're like, maybe you've gone through a pre-screening and you're coming back now for the second or third interview. Okay. If the company does that, not every company does that. You may have a one and done interview and then they make a decision on that. It really, really Just depends on the company. All right. So, if, for example, the company's advertising tagline is about excellence, you can address how your customer service expertise resulted in quantifiable results, such as an expanded business, training you provided, or client recognition you received. And I'm glad that this is mentioned here, quantifiable results. It's always better if you can to add numbers to some of your success stories, some of your accomplishments. I increased sales by 35% last quarter. I recruited 6 new members to the team. I branched out and found new customers. I opened a new project in a new market. I brought about this new innovation, in less than 6 months. I supervised 8 people. Things like that. Numbers always are good selling points. So, what you want to also offer the big picture. This is a general overview of the overall match. You're setting a general comfort zone here. For example, talk about how long you've been doing X, Y, and Z. What type of companies, your applicable skills, areas, your technical skills, your training and education. Maybe you've been promoted frequently or have been given increased responsibility or staff, which objectively attest to your big picture value. Share this information. Keep this information going. So remember, discuss your accomplishments. This is your opportunity to talk more specifically about a couple of specific projects that showcase your related skill sets and experience. Results are what count. However, so be sure to mention how the contributions helped your company and how your expertise could similarly make a significant impact for this company. Be concise. Communicate that you have excellent people skills. If you have a few soft skill attributes that you feel would be an asset to the position, such as team player, motivational leader, strong work ethic, etc., tell them this. By addressing the low turnover in your department, for example, you underscore that you have strong management potential. Oftentimes, slightly stronger people skills trump minor weaknesses in technical expertise. Unlike technical skills, it's virtually impossible to teach attitude. So remember that some soft skills are much more viable than technical skills. If I mention you're a team player, you arrive on time, you're a go-getter, you're a self-starter, you do presentations well, you speak well, you write well. Sometimes they will overlook if you don't bring some of the things that they can teach you once you're on the job. You want to prove that you're a great investment. Every manager wants to be assured that you'd offer a good return on investment. They want to mitigate risk and avert being in the hiring doghouse. This is your chance to use bottom line examples of why the company will benefit from hiring you. What are some specific applicable accomplishments that illustrate this? Where possible, give dollar percentages, as I mentioned, or raw numbers. Let me just cover that again. You reduce expenses by a certain percentage or dollar figure. You streamline certain processes. Think about that closet that I talked about earlier, how it was organized. You develop new programs that increased revenues. You reduce turnover. You secured new accounts or expanded on existing businesses. This is not to downplay your overall awards, recognition, kudos, soft skills, or overall success. They still support your market value in a credible way. And remember, you should be enthusiastic too. Enthusiasm is a really big thing. Once you've made a solid argument for your skills being a good match, there's one more factor in this mix. Show your excitement and enthusiasm for the position. No matter how good you look on paper or present facts for the position, illustrating that you're genuinely motivated and want the job is a very key contributing factor. After all, this is a good reason to hire you. Just, I'm sorry, I'm losing my thought. This is a good reason to hire you too. Just make sure your zeal doesn't slip into the category of desperation. You should convey that you want the job, not need it. Okay? There is a difference. You want the job, not need it. Be specific in selling your great attributes for the job. A few words of caution. When given a sweeping question like this, it's easy to go into a long winded tangent. or wax on about the time you developed the equivalent of the Internet of Things for your employer. Be conscious of brevity and don't exaggerate. One, it may be highly transparent. Two, it may be deflated in a reference check. And three, if not caught and you're eventually hired, you could find yourself in over your head. Okay, by saying you did something or know something you really don't do it. By doing your homework, paying close attention to the input you've given, and conveying confidence in performing to the employer's expectation or beyond, you'll likely present a winning case. Okay. We talked about dress earlier. So be ready. Also, here's another subject. Be ready for pre-screening video and audio interviewing. Many companies are now using a video interview for screening processes or purposes. Don't be surprised. You will be given a link to go to a videoed person who asks you a question such as, why do you want to work here, etc. Companies like video interviews because it cuts time and saves money. Also, hiring managers can watch the videos, not just HR. So if you do that, have a video interview, make sure you're in a quiet room with good lighting. I talk a lot about interviews in another program and podcast I did. You can find it on my site and on YouTube and in Mixcloud and Spotify. Have good camera at eye level, not looking up at your nose. Think about which is behind you. Maintain eye contact. All of these things are critical for about a video interview. Follow up. Ask the question, how and when should I follow up with you? Get specific. If I don't hear from you by, can I call you on such and such a time? This is the final question the candidate should ask in the interview. Too much time is wasted wondering when you'll hear and how to follow up. Avoid all this wasted time. Ask in the interview, how and when should I follow up with you? Get a specific answer. If I don't hear from you by next Wednesday, can I call you next Thursday or next Sunday or next week or next month? Do always. Okay. Ask the question. An interview is a sales call. In any sales situation, the candidate wants to know if there are any objections. Is there a reason you wouldn't buy this refrigerator today? Is this a reason you wouldn't hire me? You can ask that question. Be bold. In an interview, use the challenges question to see if there are any objections. This question should be asked toward the end of every interview without fail. So remember, you let the candidate know. To answer the question, you may let the candidate know they're not getting the job, which is better to learn in the interview than sit around for weeks not hearing and wondering. Show the interviewer missed something or didn't ask a question to find out a skill or experience the candidate has. Once the candidate hears the challenge, they can offer the information. Is there something I didn't answer for you? Is there something else that you didn't get a complete answer to that I can answer for you now? These are the kind of questions you want to ask. Give the candidate an opportunity to talk about how they would deal with the challenge. So these objections are good to present at the end before you walk out that door. You want to be able to do that. Objections can be positive since they may mean the interviewer is interested and wants the candidate to clear away any objections. So again, you want to be sure you do all of this. You want to be sure you follow up. You want to be sure you walk out of that interview feeling confident that you're going to get offered the position. And if you're not, how can you follow up? Another thing I'll mention, if they don't ask for it, you might want to leave your list of references with them, your letters of recommendation, if you have one, to just say, hey, I'd like to leave you a copy of my references if you need them. Or would you like me to leave a copy with you or leave this letter with you? It saves some time. So those are active interviewing strategies. All right. Thank you. Look forward to catching up with you next time. Bye now.